Alright, in this video I'm going to talk to you guys a bit about performance mods that just don't work. And I'm going to tell you about some of the stuff that does and kind of the weak points in the Volkswagen engine. One of the weakest points in the VW engine, air-cooled, is the camshaft. These things are profiled for emissions, for smooth idle. Basically, they're made, so that almost any idiot can do whatever he needs to do and he's not going to screw up. Okay, so they're really made for a real basic engineering standard. They're not really made for performance at all. And you can throw ratio rockers on one of these, it'll pick up a little bit, but really the weak point is the duration is just too short. And if you want to get any power out of your VW, the first thing you got to do if you're building an engine, start with a camshaft. I don't care if you don't do anything else. I don't care if you don't put big cylinders on it, you don't, port your heads, nothing. And you just put a performance can with some port, not really big. Don't go to like an Engel 130 in a freaking stock VW. That's just not going to work. Even a 125 or 120 in a stock VW, it's not going to work. But if you just get a performance cam, there's a couple of them. There's one Scat C20. I think there's a Scat C25. Those work good. You can get the cheater cam they have from what's it called? CB Performance has one. It's a cheater cam. There's guys who've run Engel 110s in a stock 1600. Yeah, it's going to idle a bit rough, but it definitely will have a little more power. Just bump the idle up. Okay, the Engel 110. There's a bunch of different options. Spend some time and research on camshafts first. I mean, you want to power it up, start here. And then there's other options. There's a Web 86. You can put the, these are expensive cams though. The Web 86, this one's not a Web 86. But if you really can't afford to do much of anything, go to like places like Brothers VW Machine Shop. They'll send you, they have one, they profile it, and they call it an Engel 100. It's not even really an Engel 100 grind, but it definitely is a huge improvement. It's like a cheater cam of some sort, but it definitely has a huge improvement over the stock. The stock cams in these things are definitely the weakest link. I say goodbye. They're just not built for performance at all. It's just the weakest point. Get a performance camshaft of some sort. This one here is way too big. Don't go for something like that. So guys, a lot of times we'll go for big cylinders versus big cam or bigger stock cam. Look, I've got a 1600 single port with a small cheater cam in it, and all I did was just clean up the exhaust ports. Cost me almost nothing. I used a used cam that I had laying around, and I'm going to tell you, that sucker sits you back in the seat. For a single port, it moves out and pulls really hard. So you don't have to go to a 1641 or, the 88 thins or something like that to get power. The cam and the compression ratio, all you got to do is take a stock engine and go to a 8.5 to 1 compression ratio or 8 1/4 to 1. Put a performance cam engine in it. It'll make a whole new car out of it. That's all you need to do. It's just that simple. If you're going to do a simple performance mod, yeah, you got to split the case to put a cam in, but it's the best place to start. In my opinion, it's the only place to really start. The other thing that happens when you're building a new engine is, most time you could go out and price out how much it costs to rebuild a head. But I know you're going to find out once you go out, send a set of heads in somewhere, especially if you have to send them by mail or whatever, you're going to get back a set of heads, and you're going to have more money in those heads than you could have just bought new ones. I mean, almost every time. And the thing to know is a couple things to know on heads. So if you're going to redo your other heads, is how many times has it been machined down here? So you're going to have to kind of really look at them closely. and kind of know, you know, how many times do I think that head's been decked? Well, I know it's been done at least once. So yeah, is it cracked? No. Is it you know, this one's been step cut, so I know that's been done. So I know somebody's been in here before. And you know, see how far down the valve is into the seat. You know, is the valve worn quite a bit? More than likely. It's gonna probably need new guides. By the time you spend all that money on all those things, you're probably going to be into it for the price of a new head. You know, there's places out there that sell them pretty cheap. But now the problem with that is a lot of the heads that you get, the new heads, are CC to like 57 or 54 or 56, somewhere in there, right? 54 to 56 cc heads. And they're designed for a larger engine. So the reason that we started building that they started building heads with a larger combustion chamber is because most people are not building a 1600 now. They're building, you know, a bigger engine. Now the problem is, if you get heads that are built for a bigger engine or built for 1600 and they have those large cc combustion chambers, you end up with too low of a compression ratio. So the key thing is, to get power, you need a little more compression, a little more cam. It's that simple. Now, so if you're going to say, if you're going to buy new heads, you're either going to have them decked down, which sucks because you're taking a nice large combustion chamber and made it small, or you're going to have them opened up. So I elect to do the other. I will say, if I'm going to build a new engine, I'm not going to build a 1600. There's just no way. It just doesn't make any sense to do. So I'm going to have those heads opened up for 90.5, 92. They call that. That's what the opening is. What the exact opening is, I don't know. But they call it a 92, 90.5 opening that they open it for. And the 92 would be the thin wall, not the thick wall. You can get 94s if you're going to go there. That's a whole nother subject. But let's just say you're going to stay with the stock case and you're going to get new heads. Smart choice would be just to get the 90.5 opening heads and go to the 88 thick wall cylinders. Then you've got, you know, the potential to go up to 1800. Well, or 1679. But you'll have a nice thick wall cylinder and it'll work better with that combustion chamber, but you're still going to be on the low end of compression. The thing to do first before you start buying parts is go to the CB Performance engine calculator, put in all of your parameters that you're trying to do, and target for a 8.25 to 1 compression ratio. Start putting in different numbers. Then you buy your parts. So you start out with the stock ones, okay, and you go, okay, well, these are probably going to be, it says on the ad they're 57. They might only come in at 55, okay, but let's just say you got them that says 57s. So then you decide, okay, is that going to work? Am I going to get to the target ratio of 8.25 to 1 or more compression? Don't go over 9, probably not a good idea. You can go up to 9, but it will run hot. You have to run premium full for sure 100% of the time, and you're going to be limited on your advance, the distributor. I've run in 9 in one of mine. I don't have any overheating issues. It doesn't run hot at all, really, other than when I climb a long hill. So it can be done. But a lot of engine builders won't go to 9 because of that reason. They just want to make sure that you're not going to get it, you know, you're not going to push it too hard. So you start with the calculator, figure out what parts you're buying are going to bring you. Okay, shoot for like an 8.25 to 1, 8.5. All right. So now you have these opened up to 90.5. Now, if you can't get enough with that combustion chamber that's going to be there to get you to 90, to get you there, then what you do is you decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and buy a 74 instead of a 69 crank. I got to buy a new crank anyway. which this is why I build these guys. This is why I'm only building like 1904s and 1800s and that sort of thing, is because there's no real reason for me to put a 69 in again. You know, if I'm going to take apart the engine, I'll put a 74 crank in, do the slight little bit of clearancing on the case, you know what, that little notch you put in here and here, 4 of those little areas. And if you go to if you're somewhere where you have a machine shop access and you can get the case opened up for 70 or for a 90.5s, you even have to do less because you have a larger opening, and you end up having to do a little bit less machine work even yet, just so you know. And if you go to 94, you may not need to do anything, but I wouldn't go to 94. This is 94. You just start running into that. You start running into that. I mean, this is a 90.5. You imagine 94. It's going to be out a little further, and the case savers are going to be, you know, it's going to have this case savers shining through around here. So you just don't have a very strong engine. I mean, this one here isn't a very good idea either. This is a 40 horse case. They're going for an 1835 or something like that. The reason we're going 1835 because I have heads. I have access to getting valve grinding. Okay, when you have your own valve grinding equipment, then you can use old heads. Then it's worth it. If you have to send it somewhere and have them do it, it's almost not worth it. I mean, check Carcraft. They have a really good price. They used to have a really good price on head refinishing, a basic budget job, and they'd usually do a pretty decent job for that. But you know, most of the time, check them out first. You know, make sure you don't have any cracks. Just cracks and just start over. So bad ideas. Another one is to take a 40 horse and try and punch it out to a really big motor. Typically, you can only bring them up to 1600 because they have 10 millimeter studs. If you have 10 millimeter studs, just stick to a smaller engine. The 85.5 opening is really where you need to stay with a 10 millimeter stud engine, because otherwise you're going to be kissing the case savers, same as doing a 94. You end up with the same problem. So this is an 8 millimeter stud 40 horse, very rare. You hardly ever will see one of these cases. Now, the issue even with that is typically the inside of these engines. I don't know if you can see the other side there. Let me get you guys zoom in a little bit. Come on. If you can see in there how thin the outer edge is, a lot of times it's not a very strong case. Okay, so you're not going to want to put any RPMs into something on one of these. This part right here where my finger is very thin. So you end up with a kind of a weak situation. All right, it's not going to last forever. It may last 50,000 miles, which is fine. This will be a great little extra motor that I've got. And it was an 8 millimeter stud, so I thought, well, might as well punch it out and play with it a little bit. And then the other thing, if you're doing a 40 horse case or even a 1500 single relief, is I would say drill these ones this side out quite a bit, as much as you can, as much as you feel comfortable, to try and give it more input, and put a 26 millimeter pump on it. And then just keep it out of the RPMs. 5,000 maybe, that's about it. Don't even get into the 6,000 thing or anything like that. Just keep it, if you keep it low RPMs, it'll be all right. It'll be okay. Just on a single relief case, that's about what you can do. Don't try and put a lot of RPMs in it. You can put a 74 in one of these things too if you want. That's counterweighted. It's not going to hurt it. So there's that possibility as well. I happen to have, for this one, I have a used 69 that's in great shape, that has literally no wear on it, that has never been machined. So, I'm going to probably run that. So then I'll have an 1835. And this is kind of how I figure this, okay? I've got some heads that have been cut. And these are probably, from experience, these are probably near 50 cc. Okay, 50 cc. And then the 1835, I'll have a compression ratio that's above stock. it'll work. I can put a performance cam in it, okay, and then I'll end up with an engine that's going to have some decent power. So I always like to have a little more power than stock. But I'm not going to go crazy on this thing. I'll probably port the heads a little bit, but I'm not going to let it get up to those RPMs, high RPMs. You know, it's just something I'm playing around with. This is going to be a spare engine. With Volkswagens, you always need a spare. Unless you go with something like this, aluminum case, the whole 9 yards, probably never burn up that engine. But I've got several cars, so having a spare engine sitting around that I can just throw in one. Like, for instance, that one's going to be down while the motor's getting worked on. And maybe I'll just throw this engine in it, that sort of thing. So you got to think about what your goal is before you start buying parts. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, I see a set of heads on sale, I'll buy them. And you need to kind of know, okay, are those going to work to reach my goal of a little higher compression ratio and a cam, performance cam? Is that going to get me there? You know, another thing I tell people, and I'm going to tell you about this, and people are going to get me for this, but the thing people do is they'll try and go bigger. They always want to go bigger. They always want to go, first thing they want to do is they go, oh, I'll go for the 1641, the 87s, okay? And they'll put them in the stock motor just to get a little more power. You know, listen, before you do that, put the cam in first. You'll probably get enough out of that, believe me. A lot of times when you go with the bigger cylinders, the thin wall cylinders, or the 88s are really, really thin. They're really bad, not good. Put the 88 thin walls in there, or they'll put the 87 thin walls in there to try and get more displacement, to get more power. Usually what happens is you lose what you gain, because now it's running hotter, so you have to retard your timing a little bit. Or it's, you know, you lose your goal. You know, higher compression, better cam does a lot more. I could take a 1600, put a cam in it, and bring the heads down to, you know, like what these are here, like a 50cc or 48cc head, and whatever, and bring the compression up 8.5 to 1, 8 3/4 even, and I will just, it'll be so much faster than the 1641 or 69 80, the other one, the thin wall. And yeah, you know, they might beat me on the first run, then do the second run, and they're running hot, and I'm just no problem, keep going. So what I'm saying is, you don't need to go bigger to always get the power. You can play around with a lot of things to still get it. Another thing you can do is just port the heads. You know, if you got, let's say I got a dual relief case 1600, and I put a performance cam in it, and all I do is performance cam, and I port the hell out of the heads. Okay, that thing's going to run and it costs you nothing to port the heads. Watch my head porting video, and my head porting looks terrible. And you know what? It works. Port the heads, do a cam, bump the compression ratio up. Honestly, that's all you really need to do without going big. If you're going to go big, if you want to go bigger than stock, start with a 74. Forget the 69. Just go right to 74. Get the short rods, okay? Put the short rods on. Or you can put the long rod on. You can go with the stock size rods. Either way. And run shims or whatever. Okay? And then you can shim out your head. So let's say, let me give you some other options. Let's say you bought brand new heads. All right? You bought this 57cc heads. Run these numbers on CB Performance. I'm not going to stop the video and go do that right now, but run these on CB Performance. 70, you just go, okay, 74 crank. You're still going to leave your block alone because you don't have the money or time or whatever to send it out to the machine shop. Maybe your line board's good. Honestly, I always go with the new line board. Sorry, I just do it every time. let's say you don't have the money to get this opened up, but you got the money for a few things. So you bought a 74. You bought they have them at CB Performance. They're like $220 for a 74. You can't go wrong, really. You put a 74 in there. You put the rods, put the clearance rods in. You put your 88 thick walls in, and you sent your heads out, right? And you had your heads done or you bought new heads, okay? You bought the brand new heads, but you got the 90.5s opening. So you can put the 1800 together. That motor, and you did then you do the same thing. You just do some port work to it. You just open these bad boys up best you can. Okay. Clean up the places I talk about in the porting video. These ones are actually good ones because they don't have the boss on them. I don't know what they are. Probably Brazilian or Mexican. Let me see. How right am I? I saw some made in Mexico. I think these are Mexican. But anyway, do your part work on the heads. With an 1800, cheap power. You're going to have a lot of power without spending a lot of money. Food for thought, you guys. Food for thought. I mean, if you have access to machine shop, go into the 90.5, using the 74, and if you got money, you're going to buy brand new heads. You go to the 60cc heads, and you get the 92 and the 94 openings on these. 94 openings, and you get the 92 thick walls. You build a 1968, okay? You built one of those. See, I don't, like on this engine over here, this is a 1904. I stopped because we had good heads, okay? I had a good set of heads. Got access to machine work, okay? So I didn't have to spend money on heads, okay? So I stayed with a 90.5. Now, if I was going to buy brand new heads, like if I was going to a 1968, and I was buying brand new heads, I could go to the 1968 because I can get the 60cc heads, and I can play around with. I could go with the longer rods, the stock rods instead of the short rods. I go to the stock length rods, and then I'm going to play with my deck height to get the compression I want. Okay, just remember the cardinal rule. I think it's 45 thousandths is don't go less than that. I mean, that's too close, but you could go to 50, say, on deck, and say to try and get that to work out without having to, machine some of that 60cc away. What I'm saying is try and get all the parts that work together. I don't know how to explain it other than that, but if you can get them all to work together and use the ECB Performance Calculator to figure out what you want to get the goal you want, which is a little higher compression, bigger cam, and whatever size engine you want to go with, that's what you're trying to do. And that's what I'm doing, like I said, on that one. I'm trying to, I had heads with smaller CC in them, and I opened them up. I was able to open them up to get 52 cc's out of them, or 52 or 3 cc out of them, because I step cut them really deep, step cuts, and I was able to get a little more cc in there. The hardest thing is, and the reason why the new heads are all made bigger, is because they're trying to do what, we used to have to grind all this down, and all this stuff down by hand, and then hand CC them and all this other stuff, and you still ended up with spark plug cracks eventually, because the spark plugs are real short threads versus the new heads have the deeper thread and the peanut plug, if you get like AA Performance ones or something like that. I'm just kind of giving you guys heads for thought. This is why all this stuff came around, is because everybody wants to go bigger, And doing it the right way is to have more combustion in the head and not giant amount of shims and, you know, firing that far down in your barrel. It's no good. So anyway, kind of a little food for thought. I just thought I'd make a video on this. Hopefully it helps you. I'll talk to you in the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe.